Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and Christopher Nolan's Inception bombed us into an existential crisis that we may never wake up from, leaving us, like Ellen Page in this movie, only able to speak in questions.
You're not gonna tell me anything about the script?
Wait, whose subconscious are we going into exactly? It's just a dream, then why are you...
Inception explored the nature of reality with a film structure that reflects the surreal illusions of its subject matter. And after my recent rewatch and analysis of the hidden clues to how The Matrix pulled off a similar feat, and rewatches of Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, let us re-examine Inception for all the secrets that are only now being discovered. So let's strap in, hit snooze, and volume warning because you know it's coming. And actually, it's appropriate to begin with that bong sound effect because Inception opens with Hans Zimmer's thunderous score. This music is actually a super slowed down version of Edith Piaf's Non je ne regrette rien. Sorry for the bad French pronunciation. This is a song that they use in the film as a musical countdown to synchronize the kicks. The time dilation of each successive dream level stretches out the song's tempo, which Zimmer reflects in his orchestration.
It's too soon.
Nolan chose this song specifically because its lyrics explore the effect of memories on the psyche, and how destructive not letting go of painful heartbreak can have on one's subconscious. In the original French, the lyric "I regret neither the good things done to me nor the bad things" is "ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni la mal," and that last word mal translates to some version of bad in several languages, and of course, it is the name of Marion Cotillard's villain character, a painful memory who aims to literally destroy this hero's subconscious. Ironically, before Inception, Cotillard played Edith Piaf in La Vie en Rose, singing this song in particular, one of the many crazy meta coincidences in this movie. As we'll see, Inception is itself designed to feel like a dream, with Nolan casting dreams and the dream building process as an extended metaphor for films and the filmmaking process. There is actually neurological evidence that brain activity when you're watching a movie is very similar to that when you're sleeping. In both cases, the visual cortex is highly active, and the prefrontal cortex, which deals with logic, analysis, and self-awareness, is inactive. So we see a ton of crazy stuff, but we don't question it. Writers like Walter Murch have explored how our love of film comes from a natural acclimation from our dreaming processes. And to prove Inception the film is structured like one of the dreams in the film, Nolan actually timed the whole film at exactly 2 hours and 28 minutes, a dilated synchronization with the timing of Piaf's song, which is exactly 2 minutes and 28 seconds. The opening image shows Cobb, Leonardo DiCaprio, on the beach. Now, the name Cobb is a nod to the thief in Nolan's earlier film, Following, and to the American architect Henry N. Cobb, a combination of which gives you this Cobb, an architect building dreams in order to steal. The crashing wave imagery reflects philosopher Carl Jung's description of water as a symbol of the subconscious. Water, by nature, deconstructs things, yet it also connects to other water in a vast shared network. The way our subconscious is a collective ocean of ideas. Water crashes in on Cobb again and again in this movie to represent his collapsing mental state. Cobb sees these children who are turned away from him, and we later learn that these are projections of his children, Philippa and James, haunting his dreams. Now they begin to turn, but Cobb doesn't see their faces, partly because he can't remember what they look like, but also, as we'll see later, he fears that looking at their faces in his dreams will trap him in this unreal place forever, because he'll never want to leave. Cobb gets taken in to meet an elderly Sato Ken Watanabe, who finds Cobb's top. This is a totem that Cobb uses to determine his reality. If the top spins and spins forever, he's in a dream. If it topples over, he's in reality. But we also learn that this top wasn't Cobb's totem originally. It was actually Maul's. Cobb carries it to represent his guilt over Maul, and his guilt for how he used this object to infect her mind. Also notice that Cobb is wearing a wedding ring here, and we only ever see him wearing that ring in his dreams and in his flashbacks, where Maul is still with him, but never in reality, where she's dead. So it's possible that Cobb's wedding ring is actually his original totem. By the way, my totem is this dancing baby Groot. In reality, he gets tired and stops dancing, but in the dream, he dances and dances forever. Actually, All right, good. We cut from Sato to Cobb, then back to Sato from Cobb's point of view, but Sato's now decades younger. This transition seamlessly jumps back in time without any clunky earlier title, using reverse shots to put us inside Cobb's point of view as he suddenly remembers his earlier dream with Sato. It's subtle, disorienting, the way dreams transition from moment to moment. You'll notice that DiCaprio as the younger Cobb is really a visual doppelganger for the director Christopher Nolan. Probably not a coincidence. If Inception the film is a story about a dream builder trying to get back to his kids, comparing this to the filmmaking process suggests Nolan sees Cobb as a version of himself, a homesick director losing himself in and out of dream worlds that he creates, gig after gig of extracting riches from audiences until he finds one last job to artfully incept meaning into his audience's minds that will allow him to see his kids again. Whether or not you buy this, it's worth pointing out that the younger version of Cobb's son here is played by Magnus Nolan, Christopher Nolan's son. Cobb's right-hand man is Arthur, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. If Cobb is the writer-director of this filmmaking metaphor, Arthur is a producer of Cobb's art, the one figuring out the nuts and bolts of the idea to execute the vision. Saito represents the studio head, the financier, or the executive producer. And their pitch to him is essentially a movie pitch, with Cobb, the creative, turning him off with a joke, and Arthur, the producer, rephrasing things. Cobb compares ideas to viruses.
An idea. Resilient, highly contagious.
It's similar to Agent Smith's comparison of the human species to a virus in The Matrix, a film that Nolan cited as one of his reference points, along with Dark City and The 13th Floor, all of which explored the idea of the world around us not being real. Sato's dining room was inspired by the Nijo Castle in Kyoto, Japan, which is the city Cobb later says he's deboarding the bullet train at. At the head of this table is the willow chair design of Charles Rene Mackintosh and the barrel chair designs of Frank Lloyd Wright, because the architect of this dream, Nash, probably saw these real-life architects as inspirations. And then Cobb finds Maul outside.
If I jumped, would I survive?
Maul is actually taunting him, deliberately reminding Cobb of her suicide. Nolan designed Maul to be the essence of the femme fatale, a character trope from film noir, with Maul as a female antagonist who's the manifestation of the hero's own neurosis and fear of how little he knows about his lover. Inside, Maul complements that painting. It's actually a real work by Francis Bacon called Study for Head of George Dyer. Bacon was also a huge influence for Nolan, inspiring the look of the Joker's face paint in The Dark Knight. Bacon's subject here was his late lover, whom he painted long after Dyer's death to perpetuate his memory, just like how Cobb is perpetuating Maul's memory, trying to use her in his heist.
Do the children miss me?
I can't imagine.
Cobb's response both tells us that he has no idea what his kids are thinking, but also they can no longer literally imagine what his kids look like because they've aged, and that he can't look at their faces in his dreams. So Cobb shoots these guards and he stealthily catches the bullet casings before they hit the ground to avoid any noises to disrupt the dream level. And then back in the dining room, Cobb opens a safe, which we learn that extractors design into dreams so that the dreamer will subconsciously fill it with their secrets. And then notice the last number on the combination is 53. Now, repetition of numbers is key in Inception, and 2053 is a recurring number for Cobb. You'll notice later that it was on the taxi that they used in the first dream level. 20 is also the first number on the combination on Maul's dream safe in Limbo. Now that number reversed is 3502, which also shows up throughout this movie. It was the room number of the hotel suite where Maul committed suicide, and it's on the train that crashes through the dream, with Maul using the same train from their double suicide in Limbo, now destroying Cobb's plan. So Cobb reversed Maul's perception of reality by tampering with her totem, so she gets back at him by reversing his meaningful number into a malevolent force. Now, this standoff and shootout drip with Hollywood cliche, guns, tuxedos. But it is designed to lean into tropes like this, because every dream level in Inception is intended to feel like an action film, because often that's how we dream. Nolan uses these basic common understandings of dreams as the rules of his world. People typically describe dreams with elements like waking up when you die in a dream, not knowing that you're dreaming while you're in the dream, experiencing time more slowly, physical forces like pain, gravity, noises affecting you in the dream, experiencing dreams within dreams, sensing the essence of people and places despite them looking physically different. And of course, the kick, that odd sensation of falling, that muscle spasms you awake. But the one new fantasy element that Nolan introduces to this world is the technology of shared dreaming, which he even justifies later if you're listening closely. So as the dream collapses, Maul tells Sato,
He was close. Very close.
Now, I always found this odd because Mal isn't working for Sato. She's Cobb's chaotic projection. She just wants to screw everything up. But then notice her reaction when Sato realized that Cobb switched the envelopes. She's smiling. Mal feels victorious because Cobb is victorious. By telling Sato that Cobb got close, she's bragging to Sato, talking up Cobb's skills for Cobb. Because Cobb knows this extraction was a test by Sato, and now Mal senses that this next gig will bring Cobb even closer to losing himself to her. So Nash gives Cobb the kick, dunks him, and Sato recognizes that the rug of this love nest is off, realizing that this is also a dream. If you think about it, this rug functions as Sato's totem, something that only he knows the precise nature of to determine if he's dreaming. Makes you wonder what he and this mistress were doing all the time on that rug. Attaboy, Sato! So this dream also collapses, revealing that this was a dream within a dream. Actually, including the prologue, it's a flash forward within a dream within a dream. So that makes 3 awakenings for Cobb here. Similarly, the first act of The Matrix features 3 false awakenings to foreshadow the hero's ultimate spiritual awakening and to make us reality paranoid the whole time. So Cobb departs saying,
I don't like trains.
another bit of foreshadowing toward the way he and Mal killed themselves to escape limbo. So later, Cobb spins the top and lifts a gun ready to shoot himself if it keeps spinning, showing his fragile mental state and struggle with reality. But you can see here that Cobb is no longer wearing his wedding ring, since in reality, his wife is dead. Sato asks Cobb and Arthur about
Inception.
which Arthur says is impossible, giving Sato the example, don't think about elephants. It's actually a nod to the title of a book about cognitive semantics, George Lakoff's Don't Think of an Elephant, which describes conceptual framing, using specific words to discreetly insert feelings and ideas into someone's mind. Sato offers to clear Cobb's criminal charges so that he can return home to his kids.
Do you want to take a leap of faith? Or become an old man filled with regret?
So these men will later exchange these same words in limbo to remember this arrangement. But right now, this line jumps out to Cobb because it echoes Mal right before her suicide.
I'm asking you to take a leap of faith.
Maybe Cobb sees this coincidence as more evidence that this reality could still be a dream, but either way, he takes this leap of faith with Sato to wake himself up from this nightmare, which began when he couldn't take the leap of faith with Mal. In Paris, Cobb meets his father-in-law, Miles, Mike O'Kane, an architecture professor who tells him,
Come back to reality, Tom.
just as Mike O'Kane did in The Dark Knight. He hints at the thematic lesson that the hero must learn. Cobb still believes this reality is controlled by external factors. The truth is, our reality is something we choose. Miles introduces Cobb to a new architect, Ariadne, Ellen Page. Now in the filmmaking metaphor, Ariadne is a production designer, the artist who conceives the visual aesthetic and language of the movie. The name Ariadne alludes to Greek mythology, the princess daughter of King Minos, who aided the hero Theseus by helping him navigate the labyrinth and avoid the Minotaur. This Ariadne helps Cobb navigate the labyrinths to escape his Minotaur. Cobb tests Ariadne by telling her to design a maze on the spot, and she succeeds ultimately by ignoring the graph paper grid, thinking literally out of the box, designing this circular maze, which is actually a similar layout to King Minos' labyrinth and lots of artwork. So in various Greek myths, a maze represents the journey of one's own enlightenment, and to navigate the maze is to confront your darkness. According to psychologist Marie-Louise von Franz, mazes are symbols of the subconscious mind, with the winding paths and dead ends reflecting our wandering thoughts. Stanley Kubrick, who perhaps influenced Nolan more than any other filmmaker, adopted this maze concept in his film The Shining, in which the hedge maze and the maze-like hallways of the Overlook Hotel paralleled Jack's mental state, with his disorientation in that maze reflecting his insanity. Nolan's brother and sister-in-law, Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, also used this maze conceit with their show Westworld, in which mazes represent an inward journey toward an awakening into consciousness. Cobb explains to Ariadne how dream sharing works, with a diagram of the cycle of creation versus perception in our mind, and how they get in between that process visualized with a line. Extending this filmmaking metaphor, the line is like a movie screen, a literal projection of a simulated reality for the mind to perceive. And Cobb underlines this point.
You never really remember the beginning of a dream, do you? You always wind up right in the middle of what's going on.
Similarly, film scenes begin in the middle of the action, or the Greek term in medias res. Ariadne's awareness shatters a dream, and cinematographer Wally Feister used 6 high-speed cameras to capture the exploding debris at 1,000 frames per second. They also used VFX to help accentuate all the debris. And notice this piece of paper as it gets pushed by the geysers of the street as if it was underwater, similar to the water collapsing Cobb stream earlier. Ariadne now sees this in slow motion because she's still in the dream dream, and now it explodes to the speed of reality above, which is slower from her point of view. Above, Arthur explains,
That's why the military developed dream sharing. It was a training program for soldiers to shoot and stab and strangle each other and then wake up.
So here Nolan sticks to his insistence of real-world practicality, like he used in the Dark Knight trilogy. Like all of Batman's technology, no fantasy tech exists just because. They're all justified in things like military research. They go back in the dream and Ariadne folds Paris on top of itself, creating this impossible architecture inspired by M.C. Escher, whom Ariadne also references by using Escher's Droste effect to create that bridge. One reason the visuals are so eye-popping was the effort that the VFX artist put into the geometry of shadows. The surreal angles of the bending skyline feel more vivid to us because of the perfect timing of the shadow lines that spill over the facades. Really, proper lighting is the key to good VFX. Arthur shows Ariadne his totem, which is a loaded die, which always lands on the number 5. Similarly, Arthur is the 5th member of the team in terms of how deep they all go, like Yusuf is the outermost dreamer at number 6, Arthur at number 5, and so on and so on. And when the hotel rolls, Arthur tumbles, like this loaded die does, but he always keeps his center of gravity. This whole totem character parallel also applies to Eames, Tom Hardy, the forger of this team. It's implied his totem is his poker chip, you see him flipping around that on his fingers a lot. The flaw of his totem is that he misspelled Mombasa with 2 S's, characterizing Eames as a risk taker and a mimic, and he bets on unlucky number 13 because he thrives under chaos. In this filmmaking metaphor, Eames is the actor of the group, the big ego smartass, but also the one with the sharpest understanding of human psychology. It's Eames who unpacks Fisher's complex daddy issues, the way great actors can invigorate and find the truth of otherwise hollow scenes, and use props to great effect. Hardy described Eames as a James Bond wannabe, which is why he's first seen gambling, and on his dream level, he reenacts On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Cobb is chased through Mombasa by Sato's rivals, and notice how this scene, supposedly set in reality, doesn't all function realistically. Men tackle Cobb from out of nowhere, an overhead shot makes the alleys look like a maze. The walls literally close in on Cobb, the way dreams can often feel claustrophobic. Sato randomly shows up in a cartoonishly convenient moment. At one point, one guy even tells Cobb,
I'm not dreaming now, I am.
This whole foot chase parallels the foot chase of The Matrix, Neo running from the agents in a simulated reality. As we'll find out later, Nolan deliberately made this over the top to further blur the distinction between dreams and reality. Meanwhile, another M.C. Escher reference comes up with the Penrose stairs, an example of a paradox that Arthur uses to teach Ariadne how to use impossible architecture to create closed loops. Arthur will actually use this exact design later in his dream level, and the movie's best callback.
Paradox.
Meanwhile, the team recruits their chemist, Yusuf Dilip Rao. Yusuf is actually the Arabic form of Joseph, who was a dream interpreter from the Book of Genesis. Completing this filmmaking team metaphor, Yusuf is the technician, like the director of photography, a lighting director, a VFX artist, the one who applies science to produce the most vivid imagery and the widest bandwidth within which the rest of the team operates. Yusuf shows them how his custom-made sedative is used in the sleep chamber.
They come here every day to sleep.
No, they come to be woken up. The dream has become the reality. Who are you to say otherwise?
So this man is invoking the existential crisis at the heart of this film, and at the heart of The Matrix. What is reality? Philosopher René Descartes explored this in his famous dream argument, arguing that it's possible that we can wake up but still be dreaming, so we cannot trust our senses and perceptions. This concept is also referred to as the Zhuangzi paradox. Really, The Matrix and Inception led a generation of basic nerds to assume we've been red-pilled. Sato briefs them on the mark, Robert Fisher. Cillian Murphy, who represents the audience in this filmmaking metaphor. He's the heir to an Australian-owned business empire, which Sato wants Fisher to dissolve. Nolan and Murphy base this family dynamic on Rupert Murdoch and his fraught relationships with his sons. Interestingly enough, Murdoch's empire is starting to break up right now with Disney's recent buyout of Fox. Eames spies on the Fisher inner circle, noticing the pinwheel photo that Robert placed beside his father. In that picture, Cillian Murphy actually doubled for a young Maurice Fisher with glasses and a mustache. So Eames is following a key process of an actor, observation. Note that this is the one scene in the movie that the real Browning appears. From here on after, every time we see him, he's actually being impersonated by Eames, or he's projected by Robert based on Eames' caricature. It's a reminder that Fisher's whole narrative and catharsis in this movie was invented on the spot and carried out by the actor of the group. So it's easy for producers like Arthur to see actors as replaceable, but it's actors who bring all the humanity and soul to the narrative. The full team gathers to strategize, and some have pointed out that if you take the first letters of the main characters' names, Dom, Robert, Eames, Arthur, Mal, and Sato, you get dreams. But that leaves out Ariadne and Yusuf, who are pretty important too. So if you add Peter, Ariadne, and Yusuf, you get dreams pay. You know what? They also spell out dramas, yup, because anagrams are random and stupid. Their brainstorming here of how to trigger catharsis in Fisher mirrors a Hollywood writer's room trying to break a story. And as we'll see, each layer of the dream is a different cinematic theme based on 3 of Nolan's biggest influences. As mentioned before, the bottom layer, Eames' dream, is a snow fortress with an elaborate ski shootout, an homage to one of Nolan's favorite 007 movies on Her Majesty's Secret Service. But the next layer up, Arthur's dream, is a hotel maze, like the labyrinthian Overlook Hotel in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Actually, a shot of Cobb and Fisher in the hotel bathroom is framed to match Kubrick's shot of Jack and Grady in the bathroom. And this hotel later rotates 360 degrees on a practical custom-built set, with Nolan citing the rotating set of Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey as inspiration. The top layer, Yusuf's dream, is set in downtown Los Angeles, which devolves into a deadly machine gun shootout, inspired by Michael Mann's Heat, which Nolan used as a basis for his story in The Dark Knight. And you'll notice that several of the group's brainstorming sessions take place in these dream levels, not just to show us these like empty movie sets before shooting begins, but also, when you think about it, to give this team more time to think through their plan. Ariadne sneaks into one of Cobb's late night dream sessions, finding that he can only dream by revisiting memories. Mal's childhood bedroom, their first house together, the beach with the family, the train yard, their house when they had kids, and Mal's hotel suite where she died. All of these locations show up later in the movie when Cobb takes Ariadne through Limbo, which was constructed from his and Mal's memories, with all their favorite locations in a neat little row. Now Cobb has reconstructed his Limbo in a column that he revisits every night, where he tries to keep Mal buried. On the airplane, the flight attendant is played by Miranda Nolan, Chris Nolan's cousin and daughter of John Nolan, whom Chris cast in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises. And they descend to the first dream level, drenched in rain because Yusuf's full bladder. Notice that when Arthur drives the taxi, he turns off this Arabic music from the radio. The song is Abun Saloon by Yusuf El Majad, which likely would have been a song that this Yusuf, whose dream this is, chose. So in addition to the 2053 and 3502 numbers that I mentioned before, the license plates on all these cars has a state motto reading the alternate state. So after a shootout and a chase, Saito gets hit and they realize a major communication error. Arthur didn't report that Fisher's subconscious would be militarized, and Cobb didn't report that their heavy sedation would drop them into limbo if they die. So yes, the rules do change in this moment here. But it's also in a way that raises the stakes and make things a lot harder for the heroes. So this isn't like convenient bad writing. Every heist movie features this kind of mid-heist crisis that changes the game and make things harder. Eames transforms into Browning using an actor's vanity mirror. And one by one, the reflections change into Browning every time it cuts back to him, with Eames reflecting little pieces of Browning's nature. But not until he screams do we objectively see him in Browning form, because that scream is heard by Fisher, who recognizes it as his uncle, and thus, from here forward, we see him in character. Cobb tells Ariadne about Limbo, with flashbacks showing him with Mal using sandcastles that they collapse, and in the background they crumble as well. We learn that they spent something like 50 years together. But to get Mal to leave this world, Cobb broke into her safe, decided to spin her top totem, accepting the concept of this world isn't real in her mind, which worked in the short term to get her out of Limbo, but it worked too well and ended up defining her so that she would question every reality that she was in until she killed herself, framing Cobb for murder, hoping that he would join her. So they pressure Fisher for a random 6-digit safe combination, and he just blurts out 528491. Totally random number that they use as a MacGuffin in this sub-narrative, a seemingly all too important detail that really only serves to drive the hero, Fisher, in this sub-narrative to his deeper realization. In level 2, they reinforce this number for Fisher, the phone number on the napkin, and the hotel room numbers, so that in level 3, when he opens the safe with this code, he feels like he unlocked a puzzle, feeling a self-accomplishment that was actually all manufactured to drive him toward his emotional catharsis. Which again, is what movies do, folks. Sorry, your emotional breakthrough while watching Toy Story was designed for you. All of your tears have Andy stamped on them. So down in level 2, the hotel, Eames poses as a blonde woman to flirt with Fisher, a nod to the woman in the red dress from The Matrix, which is also a trick designed as a distraction. As Cobb runs the Mr. Charles gambit on Fisher, turning him against his own subconscious, he freezes up when he hears the glass breaking, he sees his kids playing nearby, right? The glass break is the same sound from him stepping on the glass back in the suite, and it represents Mal breaking into his operation just as she did with the train. So on the first two levels, Mal's interference takes the form of tragic memories for Cobb, setting her up to make one final catastrophic interference in person on the third level. After leading Fisher to believe Browning was working against him, they establish a secret about his father that Fisher is naturally desperate to know, so they say they're going into Browning's dream, but in reality, it's Eames' dream, the snow fortress. Up above, Yusuf's crazy driving sets up some really fun physics for Arthur to tumble around in. Like a producer on any number of troubled film productions, Arthur is left alone to thanklessly wrestle with problem after problem, and when Yusuf drives off the cliff early and they miss the first kick, Arthur has to quickly and ingeniously apply Newtonian physics to kick them all without gravity. That's a great producer. Ariane sharing Eames' shortcut to the hospital allows Cobb and thus Mal to also know it, so Fisher gets shot and drops into limbo along with Sato. Ariane and Cobb drop down to retrieve them. Now, limbo was designed by visual effects supervisor Paul Franklin to resemble a massive glacier made up of stacked modernist architecture, with chunks of it breaking off into the sea like icebergs. Cobb finds Mal in their old house, and they have one of the most important exchanges of the film.
I know it's real, Mal.
No creeping doubts. Not feeling persecuted, Dom. Chased around the globe by anonymous corporations and police forces. The weather projections persecute the dreamer.
With this line, Nolan is acknowledging the cliche and convenience of moments like the Mombasa chase. Mal's right, they don't make sense. Cobb's reality is as stylized and cinematic as his Michael Mann, Stanley Kubrick, and 007 dream narratives were. And then Mal delivers the ultimate theme of Inception.
You don't believe in one reality anymore. So choose.
Nolan is suggesting that the human mind cannot rely on external objectivity to determine our realities, but we can choose what world we want to live in. Truth doesn't come from the walls around you, it comes from a loved one in your arms. Inception itself is an illusory magic trick. We think it's about Fisher's catharsis with his father, but that catharsis is just manufactured bullshit. Cobb confronting his demon Mal is the true catharsis of Inception. He apologizes for corrupting her, and he lets her go because her ghost is merely his pathetic shade of his true soulmate, kind of like Homer Simpson's plant version of Marge. Kiss her! For his guilt, Cobb sentences himself to what could be another lifetime in limbo. Seriously, he and Sato grow pretty old down there. It could be another 50 years or longer. We'll never know. Ariane kicks Fisher back up to the hospital level, and he plays right into the constructed catharsis with his father that Eames set up for him. All from the photo, the stupid pinwheel, the daddy issues, the word disappointed, things that he learned on the first dream level, so that Fisher will synthesize a new truth.
I know you were disappointed. I couldn't be you. No. I was disappointed that you tried.
So they ride the kicks up, and Cobb washes up on the beach, full circle to the film's prologue, which now, in this moment to us, feels like a forgotten dream that drifts into familiarity, just as a dub for Cobb and Sato, who repeat their promises to each other, and just like the sudden dreamlike edit before, it happens again, and Cobb wakes up. But this awakening is the true awakening, an inception for Cobb, who was once defined by his fear of the uncertainty of his reality, and now defined by control over the reality that he chooses to live in. The knowing looks between characters in these final minutes echoes the ending of The Wizard of Oz, in which the hero sees that her friends have reverted from their fantastical forms to their real faces, and left wondering about the difference between dream and reality. And that brings us to the famous closing shot of this film. Cobb comes home, he spins his totem in disbelief, but then he finally lets himself look at his kids' faces and he embraces them. The camera focuses on the top, which continues to spin and spin and spin, and then... Yeah, it's a deliberately ambiguous ending, a tease meant to leave us forever in doubt. Of course, if you look into it, there's plenty of evidence that Cobb's world is indeed real now. The top does wobble, about to fall over. Cobb is not wearing his wedding ring, and Michael Caine said that Nolan told him that whenever his character is in the scene, it means it's real. But this debate doesn't matter, because the final shot of the top is another misdirect by Nolan, leading our eye to an intriguing distraction while allowing the deeper catharsis that he incepted in our minds to settle. The secret truth of this moment is that Cobb isn't looking at the top. He only cares about his kids. And if you follow his attention and pay attention to the reality that Cobb has chosen, his son James actually says something amazing when Cobb asks him what they were up to. A house on a cliff, limbo. Yeah, you could argue that it doesn't totally make sense for Cobb to have woken up straight from limbo to the airplane, and for a man wanted for murder to miraculously make it through security just off of a phone call. So sure, Cobb could still be dreaming, and Maul was right. This movie had bizarre dreamlike elements. And Descartes and Zhuangzi were right. Our whole lives could be a dream that we haven't yet woken up from. But is that any way to live? The incepted truth that Cobb learned from Maul, and perhaps that Christopher Nolan realized himself as the Cobb-like visionary of this dream within a film within a dream. And the truth that we take away from it is that we determine our realities. And that reality can be as simple as a loving embrace. Really, isn't that the dream you never want to wake up from? Nah, the dream I never want to wake up from is the one where me and Thor team up to beat up my 9th grade bully in front of his weeping children. Do you think Cobb is still dreaming? Hop down in the comments and let me have it. I want to know your take on this, and let me know what film you'd like to see me break down next in the series. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss, subscribe to New Rockstars, and thank you for joining me in this wonderful breakdown of Inception, a movie. I literally got a job at a movie theater in the summer of 2010 so that I could watch it over and over again. Ah, now those were great times. Let me remember that.